All right, here we are. It's our third installment of Weather Wise Guys. I'm Evan Chigbera, joined with Wes Peary.
Well, hold on. You're a meteorologist, Evan
I'm
Chigbera.
sorry. One of those people who
Meteorologist,
just,
West Period.
man, I get
The
really good.
doctors are doctors. We're meteorologists.
Yeah, don't you dare call me the weatherman. I don't care. I like weatherman. It's friendly, approachable. That doesn't bother me. Titles don't bother me. But yes, I'm meteorologist Evan Chigbera. I'm actually located in Birmingham. Wes is a little late.
Kansas City, Missouri. Now there is a Kansas City, Kansas, but I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, on the good side of the state line.
Yeah, you left that Kansas behind you and you took it to Missouri. A little bit with you.
That's right. That's right. There's the Kansas City like metro spread out on both sides of the state line, but Missouri is my favorite side.
I got you from there. Actually, me and Wes, we started this with the idea that we would try to put something out there that was entertaining, but also would help you learn something about weather. And we put out honest stuff every week. You know, the forecast stuff that's happened to look back. And we went to Mississippi State together, graduated in 14. So we're just two guys living the dream here, doing weather.
That's right. We're it's amazing. We're actually way past college, and we both have kids now, but somehow we still manage to like bring up stuff that happened 10 years ago.
We do.
It's it's amazing. 4 years in life will just stick around in your mind
Yeah,
for a super long time.
for us, 4.5. We took a half victory lap
That's
because
right.
there was some,
We
some difficult physics in there.
stayed for the last best year of Mississippi State football. It's been
Dak
downhill
Prescott.
since.
We were the first number one ever in the history of the college football ranking playoff. The first one that was released. We were there. Never since, but we were there.
Been going downhill ever since. And I gotta tell you, Evan, the weather over the last 2 weeks has been going very downhill
Yeah,
across
we
the
got a
country.
lot to talk about, including your wild week. So we'll pretty much we'll start it there. Is what happened here in the world of weather? And I'm not exactly sure if it was just winter felt the need to really make its presence felt, if it felt undermined by maybe some warmer temperatures in December. We had absolute madness. We'll talk about all of it. How different types of precip form, Wes. We had a mix of it, unlike you with that pure snow. Some of the social media we had to weed through too.
No, no, no. We got everything.
You
We
did.
even got grapple.
Grop. Oh, you'll have to explain that one. I don't have that in the explainers, but you'll have to touch that one.
We got it up here.
Of course, always up in the noggin. That's good. And you know what? Is winter going to last a long time? I was asked that several times. When are we going to get spring-like? So everybody hold their horses. But we will discuss all of this here coming up. But really, the first thing I think we should touch on, Wes, you had quite the week. A couple weeks ago, we were talking about the wintry weather and the possibility for perhaps some records. So did y'all set any records? What was last week like for you?
We we definitely set like a daily record, and then we ended up having the third snowiest day in Kansas City, and because we got 11 inches of snow, and it was like we got zero point 0.1 inch on one day, and the next day it was like 10.9. So it's a 2 day snowfall event. Kind of silly how it breaks up like that. But for the season, fall, winter, we've got 14 and a half inches. We usually get 18, a little more than 18, and so we're already at 80% of our average. And with how cold it's looking over the next couple of weeks, man, we may get to 18 inches by the time the month of January is done. I was holed up in a hotel. I guess not holed up, but I was staying in a hotel. My work had to pay for like 10 staff members to stay in a hotel down the street because it was going to be so bad on Saturday night, or not even Saturday night, Saturday afternoon into Saturday evening. We had hours of freezing rain. We were hopeful it would be more sleet than freezing rain. It was not. It was a ton of freezing rain. And then the biggest question was then, okay, when does it become snow? Because that determines how much snow you get. We usually give a snowfall forecast. It's a range of like, 7 to 12 is what our range was. And I was like, if it changes to snow later in the day tomorrow, it's 7. If it changes earlier, it's 12. Ended up being 11. And so that was a really really tough one. There it is, 11 inches on January 5th is how much we ended up getting, and it's like that's technically the fourth snowiest day, but the third snowiest amount. It gets really tricky with numbers, but
You don't
11 inches.
you don't have to explain to me, but for the folks out there, weather stuff it can be very pretentious with totals. Well, suffice it to say, it was a crazy snow day, right?
Oh yeah, it was a blizzard. We had a blizzard warning. It was nuts. It was completely nuts. If you are super interested in how the weather was, you can go to my social media at West Weather. I have a bunch of videos about it.
Yeah, it was. I thought about you several times because it wasn't just a one day. I
Oh,
mean, you had this over a couple days, right?
thank you. Yes, everything was an ice rink on Saturday, and then everything was a snow globe on Sunday. That was really fun. It was a really fun time overall.
Yeah.
But it didn't crack the top five 2 day snow events because it technically happened over 2 days. But again, silly weather semantics. It
Yeah,
snowed 11 inches.
quite literally semantics because when you talk about its level of impact, I guess it doesn't necessarily matter when it happened. It just depends on, did it impact you? Did you guys have power outages at all with that?
No, not really. Even though we ended up getting about a quarter inch of ice on the south side of our metro, we didn't have many power outages at all. So we got more ice than forecast, which is never which I will always be honest. That was a bit of a miss there. Thought we would get more sleet than freezing rain. That was a miss. Thankfully, it wasn't a super impactful miss. But it didn't even make the top five 2 day snowfall events. But still, it was this. The city shut down for 48 hours.
Yeah, again, I think the fact that you had that much in a day, and I think coming off of the ice, we'll talk more about that. Our main discussion today is going to be about the troubles of winter weather forecasting, and I'll tell you what I went through over here watching it. I mean, I'm staring at soundings, I'm looking at this data coming in because it was a very, very quick switch over and switch back from rain to all that stuff. So I can only imagine, going through that over there with the amount you guys got. So.
What it, do you guys? And you guys had some winter weather come through.
Oh yeah, we did. We got your sloppy seconds. So we didn't get anything but cold air from that first batch that hit early week. It just got really cold here. But this end of the week nonsense had me stuck in a hotel as well because we got rain for some, very prolonged, about an hour plus period of sleet, and then this magnificent, fluffy, you don't see in the South snow that followed up. It was something to be seen. You can also see videos on my social I took. I couldn't believe it. It's weird seeing like heavy precipitation with no noise. There's just no noise. It's just snow is just
Yeah,
coming down in total silence.
that's
Um,
one magical thing about snow is like it makes everything brighter, but everything quieter. It's like the very opposite of one another.
it was really interesting seeing that. And at one point, we're in coverage and we're like, do we call this a snowstorm? Like, we're not up to date on all the terminology of snow, but it was a snowstorm. And we had some of the highest totals that we've had here in quite some time. In fact, I did some digging. I love my numbers. So I went back to 2000, and this actually ranks in the top five of our snowiest events. So to contrast to your list, Wes, which you're seeing a bunch of double digit totals for Kansas City, in a place here that doesn't have snow a lot, 2 inches is what we verified at Birmingham. That ends up carrying a lot of weight as far as it being kind of a heavy hitter. The most recent heavy snow we had was back in 2017, 4 inches. And I'll note that
It's pretty
we,
good.
yeah, I mean, people were excited about it. We had snowmen everywhere. School was canceled well in advance, so there was nobody on the roads, which was actually a good thing because we had an icy slush. But some areas north of here got 3 inches verified, so it was pretty cool. But from a weather forecasting standpoint, it was certainly tough, as we'll get into later on.
Um, do you guys have snowplows?
It's interesting you say that. I don't know if the municipalities own them or we borrowed them in advance because we had, I'm not kidding, in some of our reporter live shots, she was like, hey, there's a snowplow behind me. And I was like, a snow, what? We pre-treated roads. Different areas had stuff laid down. I don't know the chemicals with it, but they did the main interstate. So like I-65, I-20, 459, all the major highways were done in advance. So this was a well prepared event, I feel like, for a lot of Alabama folks. So I'd like to say we had a good forecast on it. We at least knew we were getting winter weather several days out. We just didn't know the type exactly and how much. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, good because I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, if they borrowed snow equipment for nearby. I mean, we were borrowing snow equipment from like Wisconsin and Minnesota. Like it was so tough to keep up with. So there was like a chain effect of everyone just borrowing the northern tiers snowfall equipment as this thing went through.
Yeah, I'll have to look at it because I never would equate Alabama to, hey, can you get it out of the shed?
Yeah,
Get the
yeah.
snow plow out. It's
Dusted
time.
off from 2017.
Seriously, we don't ever have much. If we get it, it's north of here, and it's usually a dusting, or we get some ice, which is never any fun. So
Oh, no, ice is the worst. Ice is the best if you're a child in school. The worst for literally everyone else.
seriously, everybody else, logistically, it is a nightmare from a travel standpoint. We have, you learn that it doesn't matter if you're out of school. It doesn't matter if you can't go to work. People who work in hospitals, who work for the fire department, the police department, there are people that have to get to work no matter how many times you say stay off the road. So, trying to figure that out, what the conditions are, if they're deteriorating, if not, that was tough. So we dealt with we had snow extremes, Wes, but
Oh
this is
yeah.
going to be one of my favorite things to look at each week is our hottest and coldest temperatures from the previous week, excluding Alaska and Hawaii. No offense, if you live there, you're just always going to have probably an extreme in Alaska that wins. So I thought we would nix that. Okay. Do you have any guesses the range of our temperature that was either the hottest or the coldest, Wes? If you were to look, because I can tell you what I thought before we show.
Um, honestly, I would say like 80 to 90 degrees.
I would have said the hottest would have been probably somewhere in the 80s, maybe low 80s, with the coldest like I don't know, like -5. Yeah, not the case. So here are two locations. First off,
Oh, I thought you meant like difference between the two.
no, no, no.
But oh,
Oh,
okay.
okay.
No, I
Sorry.
would have thought like 80. 80s then. 80s then.
Well, okay.
The
So here's
worst.
not the distance and temperature, but I thought this was interesting because these are on almost the exact longitudinal plane. Okay, Bottineau, North Dakota, and McAllen, Texas. In fact, if we decided to make a road trip of it, we could probably do it in 2 days. But these,
God, oh my God, that would be incredibly boring. I
yeah,
mean, Texas would be the only exciting part. Oklahoma, Central Kansas, that is nothing but ag.
that's storm chasing country is what that is.
Jeez, yeah.
But the temperatures, how about that? I, so as I was saying, I would have guessed the hottest temperature was in the 80s, and at first I was looking down in the Florida Keys. I thought, okay, there's probably like an 85, 87, which there were a
Mm.
couple South Florida cities in the 80s. But then I hopped over to South Texas in the Brownsville market. This came from the National Weather Service in Brownsville. 93. It was actually a new record high for that date. Bottineau, North Dakota was not a
Oh, a
record
hunch.
low. In fact, their record low was -42 that day. So they were almost 20 degrees off of a record at -28. Can you imagine? No.
Yes, I can't imagine actually. I can't. Can you imagine
That's
93?
cool for me. Oh, yeah.
Our,
That's like
our
most of our
climates are
summer here.
actually like not that exactly like you can imagine 93 and like -28 is actually not that far fetched. At least the wind chill of -28 is not that far fetched for like once a winter here.
Yeah, I
Speaking
don't
of, I
want
had
that.
some guy, some dude tweeted at me, and he said Kansas City literally has the worst weather in the world. He was like rambling, but he was like, you could literally go live in the Siberian plateau, and we'd have better weather than here.
That's a very negative outlook on it, is it not?
I decided to just let it go. Like, I think this guy is going through something else here.
It could be, and
I
you
don't.
just happen to be the punching bag. So, well, speaking of, let's take a look at temperatures.
Speaking of punching bags,
Hey, your local area weatherman is always a good punching bag. If you're just having a bad day, reach out because he probably got it wrong at some point, and
uh,
he's still getting paid. How dare he? How dare he? So, oh, any extreme temperatures today? We'll take a quick glimpse at the week ahead here before we get into some more of the winter weather stuff. But if you're looking for the warm weather, West, we got to go south of Interstate 4. There, it runs from Tampa over to Orlando.
I-4. Hmm.
Magical place where we're
It's like
70s, close to 80 in Miami.
I
How
was gonna
about
say
that?
Miami, like whatever we're looking at, like the outlook maps, which we will go through in just a minute, is like it's like oh, okay, Miami is not experiencing any of this.
They're emitted
That
from it.
yeah,
It's like
that
their own
is
climate down there.
It's like they're in a different climate in general. The tropics.
Are almost like an island surrounded by water. Very nice. If that's where you want to thaw out, that would be the place to go. We had a front move through this morning, Wes. It's not a big feature. It's basically reinforcing cold air, so it's going to keep those snowmen that are still built alive for a couple days, I think. Because
Oh,
yeah, we're going to have highs in the 40s this week, and plenty of people here, Wes, did not want their snowmen to disappear, so they built them in the shaded parts of their yard. I mean, they were all through my neighborhood.
wow. That's
Yeah,
smart.
it was. It's Southerners, we don't see it often. Some
That's
people
smart.
put snow in the freezer so that they can have it and remember it. So some cool stuff.
I think that front came through here. We've had like two fronts in the last 2 days, and there's no one coming tonight.
Yep.
So that one that came through here is like it was close to 5 degrees this morning. What was our low temperature this morning? And then we're getting to about 25 today. It was literally 5. Sweet, I got the forecast right.
Wow.
It was 5. If it was 5 degrees this morning, it'll be like 25 tomorrow, and then it'll be like 50
Yeah.
on Friday. It's gonna be sweet.
A bit of a ridge here too. We get close to 60 degrees for the end of the week before rain comes
Ooh.
back through. But that's the big thing is like looking ahead to this week. It's the temperature anomalies we've talked about. That's deviation from normal, right? So
Mhm.
that's how when we're forecasting, we look at anomalies as a way to say, okay, how significant of a cool down is this? Because if you're 2-3 degrees, that's pretty normal. We're never like the average high and low for several days. It's not how weather works.
No, and in fact, I wish there was some way to assess on how many days you like, what percentage of days out of the year you actually hit your average.
Ooh, that would be
I've
interesting.
I've looked. I don't know how. I don't know how. If I figure it out, I'm sure there is some way, but that is beyond my brain
I
power.
would say I love using XMA6. I don't know if you use that for
Oh
your
yeah.
numbers, but even that you'd have to put in what the average is for each day to get that number. And since it's always changing, I don't. That's an intern work there. If we get an intern, I'll put them on it.
We need like that supercomputer that works in the parallel universes to just figure that out for us real quick because that's some brain power,
It
like
really
time
is.
consuming brain power.
Speaking of deviations from normal, take a look at this warm air spilling in here in the middle of the country,
Oh,
down West's way. Look at that.
speaking of deviations, we can't see it though.
Oh, is it not up?
No, no, no. Put it up.
Oh, did I stop sharing? I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Hold on a minute. Me and technology. I
I thought
told
we
Wes
were.
when we started this that he's going to have to be the guy who's
There it is.
responsible for the tech stuff because I'm not good with it. Here I am thinking I'm moving that forward, but we
Blue
stay.
is cold. Red
Yep,
is warm.
exactly. So look at that scalding hot air you have coming off
Oh
of the
God.
Canadian plains.
And yeah, so like if we were looking at this in the summer, that scalding red would be like 90 degrees in Canada, but really it's like 30 degrees.
Yeah, so
It's
this
the
map can be misleading if you're looking at this from the standpoint of just like a casual viewing. You see these colors and you're like, wow, what do we have there, in the southeast? Well, that's going to be like 60 degrees for us, which our average is 54. So, yes, it's above average, but it's by no means, I would say, warm. And one of the few days in January, we've actually been considered climo, which is where we should be for the time of year. But
and then in Canada, like when they advertise like 20 and there's a bunch of red saying it's warmer than average, it's like, oh, so it's like 30 degrees over there.
exactly. So, red doesn't necessarily mean warm, it means, above average. So, that's just a little, glimpse into something. Here is a look at a future view product. We look at a lot of different maps here, and really through the end of the week, Wes. I mean, we look at the middle of the country, and if I had the timestamps of this right, that would be just excellent. So you can keep talking while I
All
get
right.
to
So
mixed
the
it up
the
properly.
biggest forecast challenge for us going forward the week is a cold front that comes through on Friday and Saturday. So and then Thursday, Friday is like 45 to 50 degrees here in Kansas City, and then there's a cold front that comes through, and a lot of our like the GFS, which I think is what this is,
Yes.
a couple of our weather models, like three of them, are putting out rain to snow Friday and then snowing on Saturday. And there is a Chiefs game, AFC divisional game on Saturday afternoon.
Let's see.
Don't want snow. I don't know if this is. I assume that's the GFS there.
It is, yeah.
All right, what does it have for? What do we got here? What do we got
Got
here?
a
What do we
little
got here?
switch over right about here. This is
Oh,
Saturday
okay.
morning.
Not my DMA. Sweet. All right. I don't. That's out of my area. Thank goodness.
So
Yeah.
be right about there. But this is the GFS now. It tends to be a bit of a drama queen. It'll switch greatly between runs, and just one of the many that we typically look at. Uh,
Now, hold on. Let me remind people, and this is I'm at fault of this too. The last episode we did, it put out snow in Texas, and we were like,
Nailed it. It got it.
dumb.
Well, it also
It's
was after me and you talked that week. It also put out 6 to 8 inches for us here in Alabama, which again we had to thumb through all that. We had to go through and figure out, okay, which of these is going to be actually accurate, which one is off its rocker, and but it did. You're right. You brought that up, and it did verify. I saw plenty of pictures, friends of mine in Texas that got all sorts of snow, so that was pretty cool.
it will get. It's like it is right. It has right ideas, but it goes a little crazy.
And people were asking me, well, how do you know? Why do certain models show different things? Because they all have a different algorithm. Some of them have different biases. I think a lot of times the Euro handles snow events better, just because of how it initializes. But we don't have to go into all that. Just know we look at a lot of different stuff. So the system you were just talking about brings rain to the southeast. It's really the one mention of precipitation that we have here this week it's really going to be significant. The QPF,
Ooh.
right? So this is calling for, in some cases, 2 to 3 inches of rain for the wiregrass. For all of our southeastern states, at least about a half inch plus. So everywhere else, kind of marginal, but we've certainly had busier weeks in terms of rain. So we'll take the rain. We're still in a drought. I don't know about you guys where you land on.
No, we're good. We just got 11 inches of snow.
Okay. And confirmed when that melts, it turns to water, right?
Yeah, it goes towards the water. It's actually an incredibly efficient way of resaturating the ground. It fills up the top layer, and then the aquifers, and it's pretty good. You throw out wiregrass, which I know you used to work in the wiregrass area. Can you also throw out other random southeastern regional names here besides the Pied? I know we got the Piedmont. I'm trying to think of like ones in Georgia that I knew a little bit. We got the North Georgia mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Blue Ridge area. They call it down here. They call it the Appalachians, and they lump together North Georgia, Tennessee, and then the Carolinas. That area they just call it the Appalachians. And there's an argument on how to say that Appalachian. You could save that for at home. I'm not going to debate that. But
I'm afraid to say that word on air because I don't know which one's right.
Yeah, me either. I want to say they call Atlanta Sin City, but that's like a whole different conversation, not in the world of weather. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. We call it the Tennessee Valley. Is North Alabama, so the Huntsville market stretching up to Nashville. So that's like its own little area. Whenever we're referring to that changeover from North Alabama, we'll say the Tennessee Valley as you go up north. So,
speaking of valleys, that can make stuff a little tough when we're forecasting winter weather.
Yeah,
you can get cold air that sinks into the bottom of valleys, and you're like, that's actually freezing rain, which was kind of a problem that there was a concern over the weekend for us, is that when it was raining near some of these river valleys, the temperature had fallen below freezing, so then those bridges had started to get icy, but everywhere else it was fine. And Evan, it was snowing and it was 36 degrees outside.
pretty cool how that happens, right? Should we discuss our different formation types?
It's confusing. Yeah, let's go ahead.
So as a kid,
am I out of order here? Am I out of order?
No, we're in the meat of this. What we wanted to talk about today was the difficulties with forecasting. So I'll pull up the formation of snow, because this is what people, for the most part, they want to see when it comes to the type of winter weather. For us, everyone was glued to the screen, but a lot of people are looking at it and they're staring at that surface temperature. They're like, 32, come on, 32, come on, 32. That was me as a kid, Wes. I'd watch the Weather Channel all the time. And as soon as I saw it get to 33, I thought, dang it, there it goes. That's our chance of snow is over with.
School days, they're on. They're not off. We're going to school.
So how can we have snow, Wes, when it's 36 degrees at the surface?
Well, if the temperature just above the surface is below or well below freezing, the snowflake does not have time to melt before it reaches the surface, Evan.
Yep. Sometimes it's just the lowest couple 100 feet. It could be the lowest 100 feet. But that 2 meter temperature, which is where your thermometer is for measuring surface temperature, can be, well, we see it a lot, not here, but in other parts of the country where it's 35, 37. I've even seen it 40 degrees with heavy snow. It just means that profile for wintry precip, we are looking at a chunk of the atmosphere that's a couple hundred feet up to the base of the cloud, however high that may be, a few thousand feet. And if that profile is cold enough, we're going to have some sort of freezing precipitation. Snow is ideal, but you throw a wrench in there and you might get something else. Do your viewers ever confuse sleet and freezing rain?
They confuse sleet and hail.
That too, yeah.
Sleet, hail, and grapple, which the grapple one is a wild card.
That is weird.
But
We've
people like during like the spring, they'll say it's sleeting. I'm like, nah, it's just hail.
Yeah, so hail forms in a completely different process in a different environment. You get hail with really high top thunderstorms. They can be 50,000 feet up, and you don't get those in the wintertime. You get those in the summer when you have explosive vertical motion, really warm temperatures, and it's so cold up there that all those water droplets, they ping around, bump into each other, they combine or coalesce into these giant hailstones that eventually fall to the surface. Totally different from sleet.
Collision and coalescence.
Was that a unit we covered? Sounds like a unit we would have covered.
Yeah, like a day or two.
Weather school. So, but yes, sleet. These are the pellets. So, Wes, this is what I woke up to. I woke up at 1 o'clock. I told everybody, hey, get out of the station by 3 and you'll beat the sleet. I was wrong. I was off by about an hour and a half on the timing of this. So I had to
Same.
at 1:30 in the morning. I called our anchors. I called the reporters. I called the production staff. I said, hey, you guys might want to get out now because it's starting to sleet, and it was coming down pretty quickly. It sounded like almost like a little BBs hitting the roof and the bushes and everything. It's these little ice balls, and what had happened was initially coming from the cloud, it was snow. There was a warm nose in there. So looking at the atmospheric profile, it was cold, 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 and then a warm nose, and then cold, cold, cold. We were, I think, 28 at the surface at the time. So it melted, and then it refroze, but ugly, in these little ice balls. So that's how you get the sleet falling through that warm layer.
And it could be below freezing, like so. The three layers here. Pardon me. It can be freezing, warm, but then at like 32 degrees, but you still may only get rain. There has to be kind of a deep enough layer of below freezing temperatures below that middle layer to actually get the refreezing process to happen.
Yeah, and in that case, if you have that layer that's not quite big enough, say it expands like this, and now you've got warm air all the way to the surface, but your surface is still freezing. This is bad. This, in
It's
my
true.
opinion, is the worst type of wintry precip.
Yeah, because if it's freezing rain hard enough, you can't put salt down at a fast enough rate to keep people safe. That's the problem that we had last weekend. I was I was literally in our parking lot throwing out ice melt because the company we pay to do it just like could not keep up. People's cars were like sliding around.
Yeah, we luckily we avoided this. We had sleet, heavy, heavy snow, then back to sleet, and then it all just kind of ended. And then a couple hours later, rain started. But by then, our surface temperatures were 35 plus. The profile actually had temperatures well above freezing, just above us at about 850 millibars. So that's what we'd call the mid layer of the atmosphere. But I was so glad we didn't have freezing rain. So that was a big question: is would we still be in the 20s as it transitioned to rain? And we weren't. So
Thank God, because like you get like a 30. Let's say if it's raining at 30, it's like okay, roads are going to be slick. But once you get into the 20s, then it's so cold that everything is just ice. It doesn't matter if it's a bridge or actually in contact with the ground. You're in trouble.
yeah, and that's really with the forecasting aspect. I'll say this about like our difficulties. We do not get a lot of snow events. And because of that, I think the models have a tough time initializing. We looked at two global models leading up to it, me and you did, and then I was forecasting with a bunch as we got closer, like those high res. Like 18 hours out, every high res model, if you clicked on the little sounding, which is the weather balloon, if you guys have ever seen a weather balloon, that goes up and gives us a snapshot of what the atmosphere looks like for that given time. Now it's always changing, so by the time it gets back to you, it's probably changed, but it's a little window, right, into the atmosphere. almost every single one of those forecast soundings had us as a sleet or freezing rain, no snow. So we pivot our forecast with the local weather service office in Birmingham, and we pivot to more of an ice heavy forecast because it made sense. Everywhere you had three different high resolution models that all said it's going to be a little bit too warm in the middle of the atmosphere to support snow. And so I leave here on Thursday thinking, man, we're going to get a really icy mess. And it started that way, but didn't account for that cold layer to stick around like it did. And we had about an hour and a half of heavy, heavy snow. So I struggled with figuring out where that warm air was going to be because it was coming in from the Gulf. We had that low along the coast, and accompanied with it was that warmer air. And I thought it might get here sooner. It didn't. Instead, we had snow with sleet back on top of it. And in some cases, we had sleet, snow, sleet. So you had like a little sandwich there. But it was difficult figuring out exactly what we were going to get. Totals too.
I think the same thing happened in Atlanta, just because I stay up with the Atlanta weather. I used to work there, and so like my social media feed is still has some Atlanta interests in there. And I think their forecast office did the same thing, and that means like they're probably on air meteorologists did the same thing too, where they switched to lower amounts of snow. They ended up getting higher amounts of snow,
Yep.
and so like looking back at this now, um, what went wrong? Did like the warm air didn't come up enough, or was there like a cooling effect from the precipitation that it cooled down that warm layer?
So I'm still trying to work through it, but we had a cold air wedge set up, and I'm very familiar with the cold air wedge that we get here in the spring, in the fall, and in the summertime. It's a fancy term for you have this high pressure over the Carolinas. And Wes, you probably know this well, being in Atlanta. In the right setup, easterly winds that are a bit cooler get pooled and blocked by the mountains. So that cold air damming or that cold air wedging causes cool air to sink down into Georgia, into the Carolinas, and can often make for like a little bit of an area of relatively cooler air. We had a 1,022 millibar high sitting right over the North Carolina mountains.
That's a strong high, right?
It was a strong high. So the
Okay.
model didn't initiate that being in place. And I wasn't exactly sure, as someone who doesn't forecast winter weather, how the wedge would evolve, what it would do to our temperatures. Well, it cooled our surface temperatures, but in the mid levels, it brought about some warmer temperatures along with that warmer air coming near the low. So I think all of that together, and I've gone back and saved some of the snippets from the data just to go back and look at it. But I think between the data missing it and us forecasting missing it, there's a lot to take away. That's one of the things afterwards that I don't think we got it wrong. I think we got it pretty close to right here. I was never overly confident in the snow forecast. I was kind of going back and forth trying to figure, okay, this makes the most logical sense. But looking back at it, I think there's a couple takeaways. And looking at maybe how the system evolved in Texas and Louisiana would have been very telling to what happened here because it was pretty similar how the atmosphere changed.
Yeah, and that is something that is just always going to be a struggle, unfortunately, with winter weather. Like this reason why it's the most difficult, or maybe not the most difficult, but one of the most difficult types of weather to forecast is because your margin of error is so small, and there's so
Yeah,
many things that can go wrong. Um, that it's okay. You'll get them next year.
next year or
You'll get
maybe
them
later
next
this
year,
year. We'll see.
or next week.
And that brings me to the next thing is one of the difficult things we had to weed through here was social media. We had people, not meteorologists, who were sharing these model runs. Which how many model runs do we get a day from these global models?
Oh God, one of them we get 4 a day.
4 a day, yeah, and they in the Euro you get four as well, but one of them's not as long range. But if you took one snippet over an entire week, you have 4 a day, call it 28 runs. If you take one run out of all those models and post it, it's a pretty small sample size. And there were several runs that gave crazy snow amounts here. So people are sharing this and sharing this, and we're working here to say, hey, how come you guys aren't talking about this? Or hey, why are your totals different than so and so? And we're like, well, you got to kind of work through that and figure out what is logical. One of the models called for us to have 10 inches of snow. Okay,
with
that
like with like Kuchera. or something? Like, are we using like the most ridiculous,
That ratio,
yeah,
the
like
square
ratios?
ratio. Yeah. So we're having to like explain to people because we got schools reaching out to us saying, "Hey, so and so's saying there's going to be 8 inches of snow. You guys are saying."
Snowbird Bob is saying there's going to be 12 inches of snow.
Yeah. So if I have a good source, that's for anything severe weather. Because having to combat that are these people who have a ton of people that follow their page for entertainment, but they don't necessarily know how to like explain it. And to be fair, I'm not an expert with snow. It's a new thing for me, but I do know more than the person sitting in their basement taking a screenshot of one model run. So just listen to your local Met, your forecasting office. It's just something that we weed through down here. I know, Wes, I don't know if you have those same issues, but um, that kind of misinformation, if you will.
Yeah, we do. And I used to, it used to bother me like super hard. Like for some reason, like my first few years of being a meteorologist used to super bother me. Like I was on like a war path for like any single like misinformation about weather that I saw. Like I was calling it out. I was like, this is wrong because for this reason. Like, but then I realized that it's impossible to combat, unfortunately. And it's not like it's just random people in their basement or like that's like the class thing. It's like some random dude in their basement, blah blah blah. It's not even that. It's like my phone's weather app leading up to the big event in Kansas City that we talked about for like 4 days straight was forecasting 17 to 21 inches. And so it's not even like it comes at you from so many different ways.
Yeah,
You
you're
kind
right.
of have to like pick and choose uh, your battle. But if you're getting like, but people aren't necessarily throwing it at me like they're throwing it at you. It's like you have to address it like as best as you can. I more so run into issues with severe weather than winter weather for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I would say here might be similar to that as well. And it's not everybody. And you're right. There is several different ways. It's not just so and so posting a screenshot. My desktop is tapped into something with weather. Like right now, I'm looking at it. It says 54, sun on the way. That's because it was cloudy this morning, and we do have highs in the 50s. But when I came in here at 2 a.m., it said heavy ice coming. So if I'm not trained in weather at all and I see heavy ice coming, that would panic me, right?
Oh yeah.
And we did get ice in some spots, but it wasn't specific to like how much, when, and that's where I feel like our job's a little bit more important because we have to be able to communicate exactly what's coming. And my father-in-law loves to look at his weather app and be like, "Hey, Evan, it says 60% chance right now. Why is it not raining?" And I've learned to move on from that, but there's all sorts of wild cards.
Uh, Even it was like Saturday. Yeah, it was Saturday. I look at my phone and there's like snowflakes falling from it. I'm like, it's not snowing. What? And I go and I double check. And I'm like, yeah, it's definitely not snowing. Like it's plotting the current conditions from its own forecast that is wrong. And so it's like, man, I'm getting like fooled by my own phone here. Like I'm
Yeah.
like double guessing myself.
So with that in mind, I mean, obviously, like we do pretty good within like I say I'm pretty solid within 3 days. Feel really good about 5 days. 7 days, I have an idea of the pattern, but the
Mm-hmm.
actual numbers and the total like precip is kind of out there. So this next part of the weather outlook, do you want to explain maybe how the Climate Prediction Center, the CPC, comes up with this particular product?
I'm gonna guess, actually. I'm gonna guess they will use historical um, patterns from how things are with the La Nina, El Nino, and what like climate models are putting out. So maybe they're taking like the intensity of what La Nina is, or if it's like a neutral. I'm like, okay, during when it's happened at this intensity level, then these types of weather patterns show up, giving us maybe drier weather across the Southwest and wetter weather across um, the the Great Lakes, and that'll correspond to temperatures as well. And they'll probably also look at some climate models that will give them weekly or monthly forecasts. One thing that I love about these maps is that my market, my city, Kansas City, is probably 80% of the time at like, and this is just in like 3 month, like more than 1 month forecast is in the middle, which means equal chances. Like we are majority of the time in equal chances
Flip a
because
coin.
yeah, it's so dumb. Like it's not dumb, but we're so far away from bodies of water. It's just like yeah, we'll just have to see what happens. Meanwhile, like you're a little closer to the Gulf of Mexico, and so your weather is a little bit more controlled down there.
Yeah, we get. I always say when people ask what sort of trend we're in, I always say what direction are our winds? If they're northerly or northeast, it's a cooling trend. The second our winds turn south, southeast, or southwest, warming trend, and rain's not far behind because the Gulf is a moisture source. So eventually, rain's probably on the way. But yeah, the CPC they look at all this stuff. They look at atmospheric long-term circulations, probably the past. This is weather's broken down to so many entities. This is the Climate Prediction Center. Their job is to look at long-term patterns, right? This helps with agriculture, especially if you're a farmer, you're trying to look ahead. How much rain, snow, what's the temperature like? And for us, yeah, it just gives us a little window into what the overall pattern may have. Are we going to have an above average winter? Certainly hasn't started that way. December was warm the first 10 days, but that was still considered fall. We have been below average every day, but the next 2 months could be totally different. So this just looks at big patterns.
Yeah, it looks. And I'm just trying to think, like, you can kind of make a guess of what the jet stream will be doing here. It looks like you're kind of getting more of a trough or a dip more persistently over the Pacific Northwest, and that would then lead to a little bit more of a ridge, maybe coming in for you guys with more warmth. And that's what you can. That's what at least the general guess is that they're
Yeah.
making here based on the temperature anomalies.
We have a lot of influence on the Bermuda High. You might have heard of that. Talking to the people out there, the Bermuda High, it's a big role in, when we have heat waves here, if it's really strong and it causes ridging in the summer, we can have days in the hundreds. It also steers hurricanes, but when it has a weak influence, that allows those troughs to swing in here really, really easily because it's not blocking anything. And so, that's one of the features we look at on a local standpoint. When it strengthens, when it weakens, our temperatures change, and sometimes we get snow. Although, Wes, I did
Hmm.
look at some of the snowiest cities in because
Ooh.
I love my numbers. So before I share this, I want to put out there that depending on what you look at and the parameters, this could vary with location. But I looked at several different lists and went to different weather service offices to come to this conclusion that these
Did Carson double check this before
he
going
did
on?
not. If he's watching, he might correct me. So essentially, this is omitting anywhere with elevation. So I took out any mountainous
Okay.
areas because
Okay.
that's not really fair. You get that orographic snow. You're in a completely different climate up there. So I got rid of those. But these are look at the snowiest cities, and I thought it was interesting. Two of them, excuse me, three of them are due almost entirely to lake effect snow, and you could even argue that Sault Ste. Marie is up there as well. But just a huge role that the Great Lakes play in snowfall totals.
And I would imagine the majority of this snow is um, maybe November, December, early January, because once you get later into the winter, the lake effect snow really doesn't have. It doesn't generate as much snowfall because the temperature difference between the lake and the air just isn't there anymore.
It's funny you say that. As I'm looking at this data, the National Weather Service, the way they do it to cover for when we get snow is they go from July 1st of one year to January 1st, and then January
Ooh.
1st to July 1st, because your snow season falls literally for some of these places October to April. So it like cuts it up, and you're right. The majority of the lake effect snow, big snow events, a lot of them came in November or December. They were so like kind of outliers. I've never forecast for lake effect snow, but just man. And the other caveat with this number, Wes, because if depending on what list you look at, these are averages that go back to 1920. All right. So there are some years where if the winds don't set up right and there's not the lake effect snow, that these places don't get 127 inches. There was a couple years where
Mm.
Syracuse had less than 100. Same with Buffalo, they had far less. Places like Flagstaff, Arizona, that almost made this list, oddly enough. 90 inches a year is their average. But if something changes with the wind profile, if there's a different setup just off the coast of California, they don't have as much. So lots of interesting stuff with respect to snow.
You know where it didn't snow in California? Sacramento.
It did not. In
Didn't
fact,
snow there.
no, it didn't. And you know what? I had to correct your thing on here because you actually
Oh, what?
you won.
I won? Are you sure?
I did the math. So the your numbers you sent me were 59 and 37. We verified at 60 and 36. You were 1 degree off of both. Um, I went 61 and 41,
Was
which
I looking at the dude? I may have been looking at the wrong city. I guess.
you were. I checked a couple times. I made sure the day was right. You had it right. Even if we added our numbers together and took the average. So big old check for West. You're 1 and
Wow.
0.
Let me tell you, this is how honest Evan is. I made Evan I made this graphic originally, made him the winner, and he still went and double checked and corrected it. So
I,
I was fully prepared to be like, Evan's a hustler. Evan was
yep.
telling me that he doesn't know how to forecast in California, and
Nope.
he just did it.
I didn't. I didn't get the low proper. In fact, I went up on the low because when I sent it to you, I said there's going to be more clouds, and cloud cover means you're usually warmer at night, which there wasn't as much cloud cover, and we got cooler. So Wes was just right. So congrats, Wes. Hopefully your Kansas City Chiefs take the same enthusiasm to win into their game next weekend.
Thank you. It'll be 28 degrees at kickoff with a wind chill of 15. That's better than negative 20 for the last playoff game they had there.
Not fun. Too cold. Next forecast competition location, I picked Akron, Ohio. Why? I have no idea other than when I was sitting and sending that to you, the Akron Zips came up on the bottom line, their basketball score, and I was like, okay, Akron, there's a MAC school. Let's forecast there. I'm not even 100% sure what part of the state it's in, but we're going to forecast for it
I don't
nonetheless.
know. No idea if it's. Yeah, no clue.
What date do you want to pick? Let's see. You want to pick Friday the 17th?
Let's do it. So that means you have to send me your forecast by
Tomorrow.
Thursday. But
Or
tomorrow,
Thursday?
that's cool with me.
Okay, by Wednesday at least, because that's two
All
days
right.
out. Day before, that's kind of not fair. So either tomorrow or Wednesday,
It's like a layup competition. It's like who can make the most layups.
we're going to figure it out. Last thing I want to do is your astronomy minute, quite literally, we'll make it a minute. I love space.
Take it
Grew up
away.
looking through a telescope. Tonight, we have the full wolf moon, Wes. It's the first full moon of the year in
Oh yeah, the
January.
wolf moon. All right.
Wolf. Also, this month and this week, you can see Jupiter, Saturn, and Venus with the naked eye. Maybe not with the full moon, because that'll be obstructing it to some extent. Also, a conjunction is taking place. Saturn and Venus are going to be in line, and that's going to make it look like one bright object. These are ideas. You look off to the southeast or
Oh,
the southern horizon at about 7 o'clock, and you can see some cool stuff later this month. That's your astronomy minute, brought to you by no one, but hopefully by somebody eventually.
yeah. If you want to sponsor us, let us know. We got 100 views in our last video and
That'd be awesome. Yeah, man.
going up.
We're gonna try to keep this going. But as always, it was great. It was great discussing all the things in weather. If you have a question about weather, you can reach out to Wes, reach out to me. Love doing this. I love just talking
Likewise.
weather with somebody else. So
Likewise. Well, we'll see when we talk next week if it actually has snowed again in either of our cities, and if it's going to be like -5 for my city the following day.
yeah, well, some checks there. We have the chance of some light snow flurries on one of the models here in Alabama. I kind of deterred that potential in the forecast, so we'll see if I was right or wrong. Lots to talk about. Hopefully, your Chiefs have moved on and you're in a good mood, and have your Chiefs shirt on.
I'll do that for next episode. Yes.
That'd
Good
be helpful.
call.
That'd be great stuff. So thank you guys for watching. If you lasted through 50 minutes of this, great. We appreciate it. If not, we'll try to do better next time.